Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. In the ancient kingdom of Althea, nestled between the formidable ironclad mountains and the shimmering azure sea, there was a place of immeasurable wonder and untold secrets, the magic forest. This vast woodland, dense with ancient trees and vibrant with life, surrounded the kingdom on all sides. The forest was a living, breathing entity, bound by a centuries-old pact with the kingdom, its purpose singular and unwavering, to protect Althea from any external threat. For as long as anyone could remember, the forest had been both a shield and a mystery, its depths impenetrable to all but one, the guardian, a figure chosen by the forest itself to maintain the delicate balance between nature and the human world. The forest's power was immense, and its protection was absolute. It was said that invaders who dared approach Althea's borders would find themselves lost within the forest's endless labyrinth, never to be seen again. The trees whispered with a life of their own, the very air tinged with magic that thrummed through the veins of the earth. But with such great power came great responsibility, and for generations, the role of the guardian had been passed down from one to the next, ensuring that the forest remained in harmony with the kingdom it protected. But now, the kingdom was at peace, and for many years, the role of the guardian had become little more than a ceremonial title, a relic of a time long past. The people of Althea had grown complacent, their memories of the forest's true power faded with the passing of time. The current king, Alaric, ruled with a firm but fair hand, his focus on the prosperity and expansion of his realm. His 3 sons, each groomed for leadership, were as different as the seasons. Bryce, the eldest, was a formidable warrior, destined to inherit the throne. Gavin, the middle son, was a shrewd diplomat, well versed in the art of politics. And then there was Ryan, the youngest, a boy of 18 summers who, unlike his brothers, had always felt out of place in the royal court. Ryan was not a warrior like Bryce, nor did he possess Gavin's silver tongue. He was quiet, introspective, often found wandering the castle gardens or lost in a book of ancient lore. The whispers in the court spoke of Ryan as the forgotten prince, a young man with no clear path or purpose. But what the courtiers did not know, what even his own family failed to see, was that Ryan had a connection to the magic forest that ran deeper than bloodlines or birthrights. From a young age, Ryan had been drawn to the forest, fascinated by its mysteries and the stories that surrounded it. He would often sneak away from his lessons, venturing to the edge of the woods, where he would sit for hours, listening to the rustling of the leaves, the distant calls of unseen creatures, and the soft hum of magic that seemed to hang in the air. The forest was a place of peace for Ryan, a sanctuary where he felt more at home than within the walls of the castle. It was during one such visit, on the eve of his 19th birthday, that Ryan's life would change forever. The day had begun like any other, with the sun rising over the ironclad mountains, casting a golden light over the kingdom. Ryan, as was his custom, slipped away from the morning's courtly duties, making his way to the forest's edge. But this time, something was different. The air was thick with an unfamiliar tension, and the usual sounds of the forest were strangely muted. Undeterred, Ryan ventured deeper into the woods than he ever had before, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and trepidation. As he wandered further, the trees seemed to close in around him, their branches twisting and turning as if guiding him toward some unseen destination. The light grew dim, the sun's rays struggling to penetrate the thick canopy above. Yet, Ryan felt no fear, only a sense of inevitability, as if this journey was one he was destined to take. After what felt like hours, Ryan emerged into a small clearing, bathed in an ethereal light that seemed to emanate from the very ground itself. In the center of the clearing stood a massive oak tree, its trunk wider than any Ryan had ever seen, its branches reaching high into the sky. The tree radiated power, its bark shimmering with a faint, golden glow. Ryan approached the tree, his breath catching in his throat as he felt the magic pulsing through the air. It was then that he saw him, a figure standing beneath the oak, his form translucent and shimmering like a reflection in a pool of water. The figure was tall and slender, dressed in robes of flowing silver that seemed to ripple with the slightest movement. His face was ageless, with eyes that glowed with an inner light, and as he gazed upon Ryan, a gentle smile crossed his lips. "Welcome, Ryan," the figure said, his voice echoing softly in the clearing. "I have been waiting for you." Ryan stared in awe, his mind racing with questions. "Who are you?" he finally managed to ask, his voice barely above a whisper. "I am Eldrin," the figure replied, inclining his head slightly. "The guardian of the magic forest, or rather, the one who was." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. He had heard stories of the guardians, of their power and their connection to the forest, but he had never imagined that he would meet one, let alone be standing in the presence of a spirit. You were the guardian?" Ryan stammered, still trying to comprehend what was happening. Eldrin nodded. "Yes, and now it is your turn, Ryan. The forest has chosen you to take up the mantle and protect the kingdom from the dangers that lie beyond its borders." Ryan felt a surge of panic. "But I'm not a warrior. I'm not like my brothers. I don't know anything about being a guardian." Eldrin's smile remained unchanged. "The forest does not choose its guardians based on strength of arms or cunning in battle. It chooses those who have the heart and the spirit to maintain the balance between the kingdom and the magic that resides within these woods. You, Ryan, have been chosen because you are attuned to the forest in a way that few others are. You have always felt its presence, its power, and now it is your responsibility to ensure that this power is not misused." Ryan shook his head, overwhelmed by the weight of the responsibility being placed upon him. "I don't know if I can do this." "You can, and you will," Eldrin said gently. "But be warned, Ryan. The forest's power is not without its dangers. It is growing unstable, and if it is not controlled, it could bring great harm to both the forest and the kingdom it protects." Ryan looked up at Eldrin, fear and determination warring within him. "What must I do?" Eldrin stepped forward, placing a hand on Ryan's shoulder. "You must learn to control the forest's magic, to understand its ways and its will. There are secrets hidden within these woods, ancient knowledge that you must uncover. But you will not be alone. The forest will guide you, as it has guided all who came before you." With those words, Eldrin began to fade, his form dissolving into the light that surrounded them. "Remember, Ryan," his voice echoed in the clearing. "The forest has chosen you. Trust in it, and it will trust in you." And then he was gone, leaving Ryan alone beneath the great oak tree. For a long moment, Ryan stood in silence, his mind reeling from the encounter. The weight of his new role pressed down on him, but beneath the fear, there was a sense of purpose, a feeling that he had finally found where he belonged. Taking a deep breath, Ryan turned and began the journey back to the castle, his mind filled with the task that lay ahead. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty. Ryan returned to the castle, but he was not the same. The court, oblivious to what had transpired in the forest, continued with its daily routines. The king and his advisors focused on matters of state. But Ryan could not shake the feeling that something was wrong, that the balance between the kingdom and the forest was shifting in a dangerous way. It began with small signs, whispers among the villagers of strange happenings near the forest's edge, of animals behaving erratically, and of crops failing to grow as they once did. Then came the storms, sudden, violent tempests that swept through the kingdom, uprooting trees and flooding fields. The people were frightened, and the king's advisors, unable to explain the phenomena, began to speak of the forest as a threat. King Alaric, a pragmatic ruler, listened to his advisors with growing concern. The forest had always been a protector, but now it seemed to be turning against the very kingdom it was meant to shield. The king ordered his soldiers to patrol the forest's borders, to keep a watchful eye on any further disturbances. But Ryan knew that these actions would only worsen the situation. The forest was reacting to something deeper, something that could not be solved with swords and shields. Eldrin's warning echoed in Ryan's mind: the forest's power was growing unstable. He knew that he had to act, but he also knew that he could not do it alone. The forest had chosen him as its guardian, but it had not yet shown him how to wield its power. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the castle grounds, Ryan made a decision. He would return to the forest, seek out the knowledge that Eldrin had spoken of, and find a way to restore the balance before it was too late. Slipping away from the castle under the cover of darkness, Ryan made his way to the forest's edge. The trees loomed tall and ominous in the fading light, their branches swaying in the breeze as if they were alive, watching his every move. But Ryan felt no fear, only a sense of resolve. He had been chosen for this, and he would not fail. As he stepped into the forest, the world around him seemed to change. The air grew thick with magic, the sounds of the castle fading into the distance as the forest closed in around him. The path before him was unclear, but Ryan knew that the forest would guide him, as it had before. He walked for what felt like hours, the trees pressing closer with each step, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out the moonlight. But Ryan pressed on, his heart pounding in his chest as he ventured deeper into the unknown. Finally, he came upon a small clearing, similar to the one where he had met Eldrin. In the center of the clearing stood a stone altar, covered in moss and ivy, its surface etched with ancient runes that glowed faintly in the darkness. Ryan approached the altar, his eyes drawn to the runes, their meaning just out of reach. As he reached out to touch the altar, a voice spoke from the shadows. "You seek knowledge, young prince, but knowledge comes at a price." Ryan turned to see a figure emerging from the darkness, a woman clad in robes of deep green, her eyes shining with an otherworldly light. She was tall and graceful, her movements fluid as she stepped into the clearing. Ryan recognized her immediately: Seraphine, the druid who had lived in the forest for as long as anyone could remember, a figure of legend among the people of Althea. "I seek to restore the balance," Ryan said, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped him. "The forest is in turmoil, and I must find a way to calm its power before it is too late." Seraphine studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "The balance has been disturbed, but it is not the forest alone that is to blame. The kingdom has grown greedy, its people taking more from the land than it can give. The forest is reacting to this imbalance, and unless it is corrected, both the kingdom and the forest will suffer." Ryan nodded, understanding now what Eldrin had meant. The forest's power was tied to the kingdom, and if the kingdom was out of balance, so too would the forest be. "Then what must I do?" Ryan asked, desperation creeping into his voice. "How can I restore the balance?" Seraphine stepped closer, her gaze piercing. "There is a way, but it will not be easy. You must journey to the Forgotten Grove, a place hidden deep within the forest, where the first guardian made the original pact with the forest. There you will find the knowledge you seek, but be warned, the trials you will face are not for the faint of heart. Only those who are truly worthy can succeed." Ryan swallowed hard, but he knew that he had no other choice. "I will go," he said, his voice filled with determination. Seraphine nodded, a hint of approval in her eyes. "Very well, young guardian. I will guide you to the edge of the grove, but from there, you must continue on your own. The path will be treacherous, and the forest will test you at every turn. But if you can prove yourself, the knowledge you gain will be enough to restore the balance and save both the kingdom and the forest." With that, Seraphine turned and began to walk, her movements as fluid as the wind that whispered through the trees. Ryan followed, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. The journey ahead would be difficult, but he was ready. He had to be. They walked in silence, the forest growing darker and more foreboding with each step. The trees towered above them, their branches forming a dense canopy that blocked out the moonlight. The air was thick with magic, and Ryan could feel it pulsing through the ground beneath his feet, a reminder of the power that lay just beyond his reach. Finally, they reached the edge of the forgotten grove. The trees here were ancient, their trunks gnarled and twisted, their branches heavy with leaves that glowed with a faint, otherworldly light. The air was thick with magic, and the ground beneath Ryan's feet seemed to hum with energy. Seraphine stopped and turned to face Ryan, her expression serious. "This is as far as I can take you," she said, her voice soft but firm. "From here, you must continue alone. The trials you will face are unlike anything you have ever encountered. They will test your strength, your courage, and your connection to the forest. But if you succeed, you will gain the knowledge you need to restore the balance." Ryan nodded, his resolve unwavering. "I understand," he said. "I will not fail." Seraphine's gaze softened, and she placed a hand on his shoulder. "Remember, Ryan, the forest has chosen you for a reason. Trust in yourself, and trust in the forest. It will guide you, as it has guided all who came before you." With those words, Seraphine stepped back, disappearing into the shadows of the forest, leaving Ryan alone at the entrance to the forgotten grove. Taking a deep breath, Ryan stepped forward, crossing the threshold into the grove. The air around him seemed to change, growing colder, more intense, as if the very fabric of reality was shifting. The trees closed in around him, their branches forming a tunnel of sorts, guiding him deeper into the heart of the grove. The first trial came quickly. As Ryan walked, the ground beneath his feet began to shift and tremble, the earth splitting open to reveal a chasm that stretched as far as the eye could see. The gap was too wide to jump, too deep to climb down, and too dangerous to cross. But Ryan knew that this was a test, a challenge set by the forest to gauge his worthiness. Closing his eyes, Ryan focused on the magic around him, feeling the pulse of the forest beneath his feet. He reached out with his mind, seeking a connection, a way to bridge the gap. The answer came to him in a flash of insight. He needed to trust in the forest, to let it guide him. With a deep breath, Ryan stepped forward, placing one foot on the edge of the chasm. To his amazement, the ground beneath his foot solidified, forming a narrow bridge of earth and stone that stretched across the gap. Without hesitation, Ryan crossed the bridge, his heart pounding with each step, until he reached the other side. The second trial was a test of courage. As Ryan continued deeper into the grove, the trees around him began to twist and warp, their branches forming menacing shapes, their leaves rustling with an eerie whisper. The air grew cold, and Ryan could feel a sense of dread creeping into his mind, a fear that threatened to overwhelm him. But Ryan knew that this was another test, a challenge to his resolve. He steeled himself, focusing on the connection he felt with the forest, the magic that pulsed through the air. The fear began to recede, replaced by a sense of calm, of purpose. Ryan pushed forward, his steps steady and sure, until the whispers faded and the trees returned to their normal forms. The final trial was a test of his connection to the forest. As Ryan reached the center of the grove, he found himself standing before a massive tree, its trunk wider than any he had ever seen, its branches reaching high into the sky. The tree radiated power, its bark shimmering with a golden light, and Ryan knew that this was the heart of the forest, the source of its magic. But the tree was also the source of the forest's instability, its power growing unchecked, threatening to consume everything in its path. Ryan knew that he had to find a way to calm the tree's power, to restore the balance before it was too late. He reached out, placing his hands on the tree's bark, feeling the pulse of magic beneath his fingers. The power was overwhelming, threatening to push him away, but Ryan held on, focusing on the connection he felt with the forest. He could sense the imbalance, the tension that had been building for years, and he knew that he had to find a way to release it. Closing his eyes, Ryan reached out with his mind, seeking the source of the imbalance, the cause of the forest's unrest. The answer came to him in a flash of insight. The kingdom's greed, its relentless expansion, had disrupted the balance, taking more from the land than it could give. The forest was reacting to this, its power growing unchecked in an attempt to protect itself. Ryan knew what he had to do. He focused on the connection he felt with the forest, reaching deep within himself to find the strength to restore the balance. He could feel the forest's power surging through him, a torrent of magic that threatened to overwhelm him, but he held on, using his connection to guide the power, to calm the tree's energy. Slowly, the tension began to fade, the power of the tree ebbing away as the balance was restored. Ryan could feel the forest settling, the magic calming, and he knew that he had succeeded. The grove, once filled with a sense of foreboding, was now peaceful, the air filled with a sense of harmony. With the trials completed, Ryan turned and began the journey back to the kingdom. The path was clear now, the forest guiding him with a gentle hand, its magic no longer a threat but a protective force, ready to defend the kingdom from any danger. When Ryan returned to the castle, he found it in turmoil. The king's soldiers had been preparing for a full-scale assault on the forest, ready to burn it down in a desperate attempt to protect the kingdom. But Ryan knew that this would only lead to disaster. He stormed into the throne room, his voice ringing with authority as he called for the king and his advisors to halt their plans. The court fell silent as Ryan revealed his true identity as the guardian, the chosen protector of the forest. He spoke of the trials he had faced, the knowledge he had gained, and the balance that had been restored. King Alaric, his face pale with shock, listened in silence as his youngest son recounted his journey. The advisors, once so certain of their course, now looked uncertain, their confidence shaken by Ryan's words. In the end, it was the forest itself that convinced them. As Ryan spoke, the sky outside the castle cleared, the storm clouds dissipating as the forest withdrew its hostility. The court watched in awe as the trees at the edge of the forest seemed to bow, their branches swaying gently in the breeze, a sign of peace and reconciliation. King Alaric, his voice trembling with emotion, stepped forward and embraced his son. "You have done what I could not, Ryan," he said, his voice choked with pride. "You have saved the kingdom and the forest. You are the true guardian." The court erupted in cheers, the people of Althea rejoicing in the knowledge that the kingdom was safe once more. Ryan, for the first time in his life, felt a sense of belonging, of purpose. He had found his place, not as a warrior or a diplomat, but as the guardian of the magic forest, the protector of the kingdom and the keeper of its ancient secrets. As the celebrations continued, Ryan stood at the edge of the castle grounds, gazing out at the forest that had become his home. The trees, once so foreboding, now seemed to welcome him, their branches swaying gently in the breeze, a reminder of the bond that had been forged between the kingdom and the forest. Ryan knew that his journey was far from over. The balance had been restored, but it would require constant vigilance to maintain. The forest's power was immense, and it was his responsibility to ensure that it was never misused. But for now, the kingdom was at peace, and Ryan could take comfort in the knowledge that he had done what was needed to protect both the forest and the people he loved. As the sun set over the ironclad mountains, casting a golden light over the kingdom, Ryan stood tall, his heart filled with a sense of purpose and pride. He was the guardian of the magic forest, and he would protect the kingdom with all his strength, ensuring that the balance between man and nature was preserved for generations to come. And so, the story of the Guardian continued, a tale of magic, courage, and the enduring bond between a prince and the ancient forest that had chosen him. The kingdom of Althea would thrive, protected by the forest and its guardian, their destinies forever intertwined.